Hey guys, Mark Hale with the New York Post here. Today we're going to be discussing the New York Mets, taking a look at where the team is as they head into this series against the San Francisco Giants. And joining me today is my Post teammate and friend Dan Martin, who does a terrific job covering the team for the Post. And Dan, you just got finished with a 6-game road trip in Washington and in Philadelphia with the Mets, a road trip that saw the Mets continue their 6-game winning streak, but then lose 3 in a row before winning on Sunday night in extra innings in Philadelphia. And Dan, when we look at the team right now at 12-16, 28 games into the season, how would you characterize where this team is?
Well, Mark, it's hard to say exactly where they are because they've been so inconsistent. They got off to a terrible start when they were 5-13, and things looked pretty bleak. And then almost out of nowhere came that 6-game winning streak, where things started to come together. And just as quickly, things turned around again, and they started playing poorly when. It had something to do with obviously going to Philadelphia and playing the Phillies, and that's why last night's win was so important, because they were kind of on the verge of going back into that free fall that they had just gotten out of, and they came out with a big win. But right now they're kind of it's tough to get a read on them because they've been so up and down so far this season.
And now they face a team in San Francisco that's struggling, 3-7 in their last 10 games. They will have Tim Lincecum, however, pitching in the second game of this series. And Dan, besides wins and losses, or in addition to wins and losses, what's important for the Mets in this 3-game series against the Giants?
Well, there's a few things. Obviously, the starting pitching that kind of came alive there during the winning streak. It needs to become more reliable. I mean, they got a great effort from Chris Young in the series finale against Philadelphia. He didn't get the win, but he pitched 7 shutout innings. He's been solid when he's been healthy, and that's the question mark. Obviously, in the first game against the Giants, they've got R.A. Dickey going, and he's pitched pretty well, but he still hasn't quite found the form that he had last year when he kind of came out of nowhere and became a real dependable starter. He's had a little bit of control difficulty, walking a few more guys than he did last year. So that's a big thing. And then offensively, they just even in the win that they had against the Phillies, it took them 14 innings to score the second run. They had so many chances to put runs on the board, and they just couldn't do it. So they just lacked a lot of the timely hitting that they're going to need to stay competitive in this race.
And Dan, obviously the Mets suffering a major development right after this road trip ended, where they just found out yesterday that Henry Mejia, who's one of their best pitching prospects, tore the MCL in his right elbow. Surgery has been recommended. And what would be the implications of this, especially if he has surgery, as far as the timetable that Mejia would be out, and also possibly what the Mets would lose here, Dan, from a trade chip perspective?
Well, it certainly looks like he's had a Tommy John surgery, Mark. I talked to his agent. He's going down to see James Andrews at some point soon. They haven't set that up yet, but that's who's going to give the second opinion. So everyone expects the outcome to be surgery, and with that comes it's hard to pinpoint exactly, but whether it's a 9 or a 12-month recovery period, that's the better part of a year, if not a full year, maybe a little bit more, that he's going to be out. He's still only 21 years old, which is sometimes hard to hard to remember because he seems like he's been around for longer than a 21-year-old should. But there's still plenty of time for him to recover and become a really good major league pitcher, which they're waiting for him to become and really need him to become. They need something to kind of go right. They really have had very few breaks go their way, and this is just another example of things not going their way. In terms of trade prospects, right now, I don't think that they were looking to trade him, but if teams were considering him, he's obviously off the table now. You're not going to even consider trading for someone who's going to be out for a year. And so, best case scenario is he's back. He's ready for around the beginning of next season. Whether that delays his arrival to the majors again, that remains to be seen. That maybe if he's healthy enough to pitch a little bit in spring training, they'll move him along and he'll be able to pitch for the Mets next year. But essentially, it's just another knock for a team that really has suffered a ton of them, kind of a countless amount of them, and it's hard to keep taking them.
Yeah, and it's not only it's not even the first knock necessarily against Mejia specifically, Dan, right? Because last year he had something as well where I remember there was a minor league start that he had to leave, and there was some kind of health issue there. Is he developing a reputation as maybe being somebody who can't necessarily be counted on from a physical perspective, do you think?
Absolutely. I think that reputation began last year.
Yeah.
So this is certainly only going to strengthen that reputation.
It's almost for Fernando Martinez.
During spring training that he was concerned about how hard he throws the ball because he's not the biggest guy. He's only about 6 feet tall, and he throws. He can throw 98 miles an hour, but that can put a lot of stress on an arm, and it's taken its toll on Mejia so far, and he's had different types of injuries too. It's not just an elbow or a shoulder, or there's been a wide variety. So that's also concerning that you can't just pinpoint one thing that maybe if he corrects that, the problems will go away. Some guys are just susceptible to injuries, and it certainly appears that he might be one of them.
Yeah, it seems like he's following the same kind of path as Fernando Martinez, the outfielder in the minor leagues as well. And when you look at outfielders in the major leagues, Dan, Jason Bay coming back from an injury himself, he's kind of got off to a decent start when he joined the team, and the team played well when he was activated, as you documented in your story in yesterday's paper. But now he's kind of fallen off a little bit. He doesn't seem to be looking that great at the plate right now. What are you seeing out of Bay, and is there a concern that he's either not fully healthy or he's just kind of going to have the same type of season that he had last year before he got hurt?
I think he's healthy. He's been battling a bug. There's been a lot of illnesses running around the Met clubhouse lately, but obviously that's not what's really slowing him down, and that's not certainly not their concern. He says he's not pressing and that he's not worried about anything, but it's hard to believe that he isn't after the last year's problems when he was had so many troubles at the plate even before he got hurt, and then he had the concussion. And when he came back this year, he had a pretty solid spring training. Not the power numbers that they were looking for, but they just wanted him to find his stroke back.
Right.
And and he was showing signs of that when he came back the first few games, about 9 to 10 games ago. But he was also the recipient of some good breaks where balls would fall in. He had a pop fly that turned into an inside the park home run or error, as it was called.
Right.
But so we might have been a little bit fooled by how good he was doing. Like you mentioned, they had a 6-game winning streak. The first 6 games he returned, part of that was a product of their opponents. They were playing Arizona, and when they started playing the Phillies, reality kind of set in. But they have to be concerned because this is the second year of a huge contract. They didn't get what they wanted out of him last year. And you have to worry that he's going to find himself in the same situation he was a year ago, where he just he can't find the power, can't find the consistency.
Last question, Dan, before we let you go, is one of the good things that the Mets had this weekend was Ronnie Paulino's activation, and then he picks up 5 hits in their Sunday night win, including the game winner, especially with Josh Thole struggling defensively, as you mentioned in your story today. Is there a potential catching issue there where maybe Paulino starts to get more time, maybe Thole gets phased out a little bit?
I don't think that's up for discussion just yet. I mean, Paulino just came back. Obviously, only had the 1 start, but he made quite an impression with the 5 hits in that start, and it did coincide with the problems that Thole's had, largely behind the plate. I mean, at the plate, I think they think he'll figure it out, and they seem pretty confident that he's just going through a phase behind the plate now too. But he's not throwing guys out on the base paths. His pass balls are up. So it's something to keep an eye on. I wouldn't say there's anything really to look at right now, but if Josh continues to struggle and Paulino shows that he can play regularly, not just against lefties, I think it's something that the Mets would have to consider.
All right, well, we're going to talk more with Dan as the season goes on. For now, we're going to let him go. For the New York Post, I'm Mark Hale.